Well, hi everyone, Bill Sheridan with the Maryland Association of CPAs here, and I had a chance to spend a couple of days in Dallas recently at the offices of Intuit. A number of accounting thought leaders had gathered there to talk about a new report that's just been published. That report is called Intuit 2020, 20 Trends That Will Shape the Next Decade. Here's a copy of the report right here. It's really kind of a fascinating prediction of sorts of what business will look like 10 years from now. And you know, we all know how chaotic things are today. Well, the report predicts that chaos is just going to continue, but that some intriguing opportunities will arise as well. The research for the report was led by Emergent Research. Also at the meeting was Steve King, who is the lead researcher for Emergent, and I had a chance to sit down with Steve after the meeting to talk about the report in detail and what it means for businesses and for CPAs. Here's what Steve had to say. Now, Steve, your report is broken down into 4 sections, so I'd like to spend a little bit of time taking a brief look at each. First of all, demographics. In a nutshell, what do we need to be looking for in that area?
There's a couple key demographic trends. Baby boomers are aging, and because it's a large cohort, it's aging the U.S. overall. And so when you look out to the year 2020, about a quarter of our workforce will be over the age of 55. Over half the disposable income in this country will be with people age 55. And similar trends are happening in Europe. Japan's aging even more rapidly. The developing world relatively young, but in a broad sense in the United States, you need to think about what an aging workforce and an aging population means for your business and what it may mean for you. At the same time we're aging, though, we have this new generation coming up, Gen Y, the millennials born between roughly 1980 and 2000. They're now entering the workforce by 2020. The oldest of them will be 40 years old. They'll be starting families, assuming positions of authority, and they will bring with them their views around work-life balance, the importance of work-life balance. They'll bring with them their technology skills and abilities, and have some pretty fundamental shifts on how we organize ourselves from a business perspective and also from a societal perspective. A couple other key trends. One is what we call it's a she economy, the growing role of women and the growing power of women in the economy, both from a business standpoint and from a purchasing standpoint. There'll be over 1 billion globally, over 1 billion women enter the mainstream economic world over the next decade. So women, very important growing role. High levels of education, out-educating men, and again will be continuing to assume greater responsibility roles. We actually forecast that the wage gap will come close to closing over the next decade, the wage gap we've had for a long time. And then in the demographic sphere, our last sort of trend is multiculturalism. We call it cultural fusion, particularly in the United States, where we're seeing the Hispanic population grow to about 18% of our total population, foreign born up at 50%. Caucasians will still be in the majority in this country in 2020, but our 4 largest states Caucasians will actually less than half. So a multicultural mix and a cultural fusion as we become a much more diverse country.
Next up, you address a number of social trends. How are these going to be impacting businesses over the next decade?
Pretty major social shifts that we're seeing. One we call the participatory economy, which is a shift towards more collaborations, big businesses collaborating with small businesses collaborating with each other, everybody collaborating with their partners, and more importantly, in some ways, their customers. So we're seeing a fundamental shift towards increased collaboration in the business sphere, sharing more information. The walls and the rigidity surrounding companies will start to break down, and information will flow more freely. You'll be much more transparent. We tend to refer to this as the participatory economy, and we see that as a major shift in terms of how businesses will act, driven in part by technology and social media, in part by the more collaborative forms that Gen Y has about their lives, and also the way women are more collaborative in their lives. These things come together and we end up with a more collaborative economy. Another major trend we see is we call new localism, and this is the paradox trend. The internet was supposed to make location less important. There's a counter trend to that where location's becoming even more important. With more people working from home, you see more involvement in the community, and we've seen community involvement start to grow. Meetups, online forums, even in major cities now, communities are pulling together, neighborhoods where people never knew one another now get together on a regular basis.
Economic trends. Now, your report says that post-recession, the economy is going to have to adjust for both abundance and scarcity. Tell me what that means.
Yeah, it's an interesting, another paradox. Digital information and digital products, things made with computers, made with digital content, are going to continue to take advantage of those economies of scale. Faster, cheaper, better. The computer is a great example, but also you're seeing automobiles that are faster, cheaper, and better because they've been including digital content and computer technology. And so digital things made of bits, will get cheaper. But at the same time, things made of atoms, commodities, energy, products, even our supply chain, which is mostly made up of physical resources, those things are going to become, in some cases, more scarce, more expensive, and we'll even see shortages. And so, for example, roughly in the last year, the price of a container shipment across the Pacific has more than tripled. It's because there's a limited number of ships, limited amount of capacity. Energy prices are going up. We're seeing spot shortages in key minerals, in key industrial minerals in particular. So things that we'll see a paradox that as a business person you're going to have to understand what role physical goods play in your product mix versus what role digital goods play. And because of that, you're going to see very different rates of inflation, and high inflation in some sectors, low inflation or even deflation in other sectors. And so adds a lot of complication to the business planning that we'll face this next decade.
Finally, technology. Things have changed so fast. How are they going to change even more in the next 10 years?
For us, the interesting thing is when you look at the key trends that have happened over the last few years, it's around mobile computing, social computing, and social media, and cloud computing, and the emergence of the cloud as a platform. And the next decade is going to see these things merge and converge and become even more powerful. And so distributed work, our ability to do work whenever we want, wherever we want, or unfortunately, wherever we are, whenever we are, is going to become increasingly common. The tools have come together for us so that we can now work at any place at any time. Pluses and minuses to that, of course. But the whole point of distributed work means it won't matter so much where you are as much as what you do, and you'll be able to collaborate with others. We're also very excited about the rise of robotics and what we call smart machines. Sensors are starting to permeate our environment and our economy. Buildings understand what their temperature is. Products understand where they are in the supply chain. And they not only starting to understand their environment, they can make simple decisions about what the feedback from their environment means. A product, if it knows it's in the wrong supply chain, can identify that, and the machine and the equipment can automatically send it where it should be. And so we'll see digital assistants start to take on increasing numbers of low-level decisions. Don't get me wrong, it's not artificial intelligence. Robots aren't going to run our world. But we will have situations where a lot of mundane tasks, ordinary tasks, day-to-day tasks will start to outsource to intelligent software and intelligent machines.
A couple questions related specifically to the CPA profession. Now, if you had to boil all of what you just said down, what do you think this report tells you about where the profession is headed?
I think one of the biggest impacts is automation, and the ability to do it yourself for end users is going to result in fewer, it was described in our session today, interesting, as mundane tasks, data collection, data organization, data presentation. And so those tasks will start to be automated away. If they're not automated away, in some cases they'll be outsourced to lower cost areas and producers. And instead, the CPAs and the accounting profession will need to move upstream, adding more value services. I think there's a great opportunity for them to make that move and become more involved in business process, more involved in consulting with their clients, and less involved in simply data aggregation. I think that's a huge opportunity. I also think that's a huge challenge for a lot of the profession.
And as far as a CPA's clients or customers go, what kind of role can these CPAs be playing for businesses as they try to deal with this wave of change?
Well, I think, again, to me, there's an opportunity here. We do a lot of work with small businesses in particular, and the world is becoming rapidly more complex. And the importance of understanding the data and the financial information behind your business and how your business is performing is becoming much more important. And so not only do we see CPAs needing to move upstream and become more consultants, small business owners in particular, but it's also true for large businesses, are going to need more assistance in understanding this complex world and rapidly changing world that we now live in. In the next decade, they're going to need a lot of help. Tax law changes, healthcare changes, environmental law changes, globalization, just to name a few, employee classification, just a number of areas where businesses are going to need help, and I think that's a great opportunity for CPAs.
Steve King, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.